invite the people who are here to introduce themselves to the audience on the street. And we'll start on the far end of this table.
Yeah.
Far.
Go ahead. Good evening, Louis Grimm. I'm the Vice President of Sully District Council and representative of the Franklin Farm Foundation.
I'm Stephen Short, I'm President of the West Fairbanks County Citizens Association. I represent Virginia Chase.
Okay, third, you go ahead.
I'm James McCon, represent Baton Rouge Homeowners Association.
Okay, over here.
I'm Cynthia Shang, I'm just a resident of Pleasantville.
Okay, introduce yourself if you would like.
Good evening, I'm Michael Cooper, State and Local Government Affairs Manager for the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority.
And I'm the unseen MC, Jeff Barnes, representing Chantilly Highlands. Thank you all for coming. Now let's start with the people on the screen, and let's start with the per center row, which will be right here. Hello, that's Mike. Why don't you tell us who you are?
Oh, yeah, you're asking about me, Mike Jack, Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, Noise Office.
Okay, then let's go, Jay.
Yes, Jay Johnston, Treasurer, Sully District Council, representing Virginia Run.
Beneath you. And that's Jahan.
Oh, hi, I'm Jahan Arslan and I'm a homeowner. I don't live in a homeowners association, but I've been involved with Sully District Council for a number of years. And I'm interested to hear tonight's presentation. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. To the left. Jim?
Yeah, this is Jim Neighbors. I'm in Sully Station. I'm the Secretary of the District Council.
Okay, the other Jim?
Is it my turn? I'm Jim
Yes.
Hart. I live in Virginia Run.
Okay, the first person on the third row who just joined us.
Patrine Preston.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now that we've all introduced ourselves and we welcome those from far distance supervisory districts, because we always encourage people to participate. We thank you for joining us tonight. Speaker tonight is Mr. Michael Cooper. Mr. Cooper has been before us many times in the past, both on land use and the status of the airport. So with that, I'm going to share my desk, okay? I'm going to open share content. I'm going to open Firefox. And then I'm going to go to back full screen mode, turn this off. I'm going to go to here, and then I'm going to open up the presentation. And so it's here. And I think it's this full screen mode. No. Show document outline. I want it to be full screen. No. All right, I'll figure that out. Maybe this is it. Does it say? Add images. No, that's print. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to go make it bigger. All right, so we're ready to start, and I'll play around with this as we go further. And we'll make this bigger. Okay. And we'll close this up. We don't need that. There we go.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight to the Sully District Council Citizens Associations. On behalf of the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, our CEO, the leadership team, and our board of directors, I want to thank the Sully District Council for Citizens Associations for your longstanding support and clearly for tonight's invitation. A lot has happened since the last time I was with you, and certainly within this past year as we returned to air travel nationally and internationally. Next slide, please. So just to kind of level set, particularly if there's any new members joining us, our mission is to serve the traveling public and promote economic growth in the National Capital Region. The Airport Authority impacts our businesses, impact over 23 billion of regional investment and economic output, delivering 14 billion in regional GDP. If all this economic activity were consolidated into one publicly traded company, it would rank 123 on the Fortune 500 list. Over 20,000 people work at Dulles Airport campus, and over 180,000 local jobs are supported by the Airports Authority. And we also help stimulate about $1 billion in state and local taxes, translating to a daily rate of about $3 million flow into state and local tax authorities all around the Commonwealth. All of our Fortune 500 companies in this area, we are grateful to have, and certainly grateful to Fairfax County Economic Development and Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for their longstanding efforts in trying to attract those Fortune 500 companies. Amazon, Hilton, Boeing, Nestle, Capital One, General Dynamics, all have headquarters in the region, as you know, and they rely, as we do and you do, on Dulles and Reagan National Airports daily. So we thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and talk a little bit about the Dulles Corridor. Next slide. But it's important to recognize that our two little airports are actually part of a Virginia aviation system. While we might be in the top right there where the big blue arrow is, there's also 7 other additional additional commercial service airports around the Commonwealth, which are all listed in red there. And we are together part of a network of 66 public use airports, including the general aviation airports similar to Manassas and Leesburg Executive in our region, all across the Commonwealth. Next slide. And I do want to level set for just a second. Our federal airport properties, some people are aware and some people aren't. They're fairly extensive here in the Northern Virginia area. Many folks are familiar that at Reagan National Airport, the Route 233 bridge connecting Route 1, where maybe someday the Caps and Wizards might play, is part of airport property, as well as the airport proper that you're familiar with in the Potomac River. Over at Dulles International, everybody's aware of the airport boundaries, but in fact, 28 is on airport property basically from just north of 66 along airport property up to the Dulles Access Highway. That's all built on airport property. Basically, everything you see in red on this slide is airport property. And when I say airport property, it's federal airport property. Washington Dulles and Reagan National are the last 2 federal airports in the country. Most airports over the years were devolved to a state or a locality, a city, Chicago, for instance. But Dulles and Reagan National are the last 2 federally owned airports in the nation, and the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority has been granted a long-term lease with permission from the Congress, and our political partners, the Commonwealth of Virginia and the District of Columbia, passed legislation to create the Airports Authority, and we operate and maintain all the federal property that you see there. So the point of this slide is to recognize that all the interchanges along 28, along the Washington Dulles International Airport, interchanges with the Dulles Greenway, all the interchanges along the Dulles Toll Road, the Dulles Access Highway that are in Fairfax County, all of those are actually on airport property. or at least they start and end on airport property. So we have a pretty significant responsibility in regional transportation in this area, and we take it very seriously. And we're delighted to have the opportunity to manage closely with the Commonwealth itself and VDOT, and also our local government partners. Next slide, please. So while we're speaking about the Dulles Toll Road briefly, since March of 2023, Dulles Toll Road has been in an all-electronic tolling mode. So you can use EasyPass, a mobile app, or a pay-by-plate option. And you have noticed, if you're on the Dulles Toll Road recently, that there are no more, and there haven't been since the COVID started, actually, coin collectors. We removed now all those gates, and it is all electronic tolling all the time. Next slide, please. We're looking forward to 2024 in October next year, when we're going to celebrate our 40th anniversary of the Dulles Toll Road. And you see the lovely folks from the Reston community who were there 40 years ago to welcome the opening of the Dulles Toll Road, and thought you might enjoy that picture a little bit. Next slide. So ours is a dual airport system. Reagan National is about 860 acres. These numbers of operations you're seeing are from our 2022 year. We're just closing out 2023, and they'll be updated. But certainly the point of this slide is twofold. One is that there are actually more passengers served at Reagan National than there are at Dulles currently. However, Dulles is the growth airport in the region, and certainly on the East Coast. Reagan National could actually fit in between the center right, the right and the center runways of Dulles. That's the significant difference in size between Reagan National and Dulles International. About 12,000 acres, or a little bit beyond 11,000 acres at Dulles International, and 860 at Reagan National. Next slide, please. We have a lot to celebrate this holiday season at the Airport Authority. The Dulles Metro Station just celebrated our first anniversary and 1 millionth passenger. The Dulles is one of the fastest growing international gateways in America, and gateway airports in America. Our passengers have exceeded the pre-pandemic levels. Finally, 2023 was a record year for our new airline service, and we have been focused for quite some time on lowering cost per enplanement for our airline partners, so that they can find a fiscally attractive opportunity to serve this region at Dulles. And our 2024 cost per enplanement is projected to be the lowest in many, many years. Certainly some great international and domestic low-cost carriers have come to service and come to be in service at Dulles because of a lower cost per enplanement. Next slide, please. This is a slide that kind of shows the passenger levels, where at the top black line, I just want to point out, where as of August of 2023, we have finally exceeded where we were at our share of passengers for 2019. So as our airports collectively, the pandemic is over. We're looking forward to increasing service at both airports, both domestically and internationally. Next slide, please. And the international recovery is by region, actually started in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. Europe came along, Canada is surging, and we are now starting to see growth in the Asian markets. This slide was actually updated this morning with a presentation from our Airline Business Development Director that showed even more improvement in the Asian markets. But the slide you're looking at here was as of November of this past year. Next slide, please. So it's been a record year for service. Collectively, we have 9 new airlines, 18 new routes, and over 3/4 of over 769,000 annual passengers and seats. And you can see on the left side some of our new service that we have starting in 2023, including Norse and Play, low-cost international carriers. Next slide, please. In 2024, we're expecting more service and bigger planes. Aeromexico, Lufthansa, Allegiant, Sun Country, Swiss International, all due to start service in 2024. And we're looking forward to continued growth, certainly at both of our airports, but primarily Dulles. That's the growth airport for us. Next slide, please. We have an extensive workforce in the airport authority itself. I mentioned there's well over 20,000 who work at Dulles alone. But the airports authority itself only has about 1,500 people who are airport authority employees. However, just like any other employer in the region, it's been extraordinarily important that we do everything we can to both promote from within and recruit from exterior, from the community for a sustainable workforce. So we work very, very closely with the Fairfax County folks and Loudoun County folks for successful job fairs in April and July. We had a really extraordinary apprenticeship turnout in cooperation with Loudoun County, and unfortunately Fairfax was going to come, but they ended up having to close school on the date that was selected for the apprenticeship program. So we'll get Fairfax back on the schedule for next year. Next slide, please. So we're all about making Dulles International even better. We are looking forward to a new concourse opening in 2026. I'll show you that in a picture in a minute. It'll add 14 gates for narrow-body jets. Some of you are aware we have a renewable solar energy project at Dominion, which I'll show you in a minute. It's expected to be completed in 2026. Folks, that solar farm is going to be built in between our runways at Dulles. It'll feed the Dominion service area. We actually have an arrangement with Dominion that we get some electric buses and some other electric conversion and charging stations and that sort of thing. But we're not getting any special treatment from Dominion. We're still a customer of them, just like all of you. We've just given them a place on the solar farm where they can expand the service to their grid. New metro ridership continues to grow, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and I'll talk about some new concessions and passenger amenities at Dulles. Next slide, please. So Tier 2 Concourse. This is a complicated name, Dulles Tier 2 Concourse East. That's what the FAA asked us to refer to this project. This project is on the left hand of your screen. It's a blue concourse there shown on the line for the Aerotrain. For those of you who have ever flown United, you know, you've taken the Aerotrain at Dulles, you pop up out of the Aerotrain, and then you have to walk back 1,000 feet to Concourse C and D. Well, the Tier 2 concourse is being built where you would pop up from the Aerotrain. The reason you pop up there is we've always envisioned a concourse out in that area. So when we built the Aerotrain years ago, we looked ahead and said, this is where we're gonna pop everybody up. For a period of time, they'll be walking back to some of the other concourses, but that's where the new Tier 2 concourse east will be built. Design status is at about 50% as of this month. 90% design is due in April of 2024, and we're looking forward to some significant construction work beginning thereafter. And we want to thank our federal U.S. senators and members of Congress, our delegation and the Biden administration and the Trump administration for federal monies that have all helped get this project off the ground. Next slide, please.
So just a question on this, if I may. The people who want to go to C and D will still get off with the tier 2 East concourses and then just do the same thing they're doing now, just continue backwards.
I've misspoken, please excuse me. So, eventually, we're going to take down the CD concourse.
Understand, but
Right.
if tier 2 East concourse will be built
Yes.
prior
yes,
to the removal of concourse CD.
Correct.
Therefore, if you take the train to tier 2 East concourse and really want to go to CD, you'll get off at the tier 2 and walk backwards, is what I'm saying. You're going to have to do the same what you're doing now, because some people will just get off there and be lucky, as opposed to the others who have to schlep back.
You're correct, Jeff.
Okay, so in the future, we want to be on the tier 2 East concourse and not schlep, as a segment.
If you're flying United, you'll be going out of tier 2.
All right, good, thank you. All right, next.
Is that every United operation out of tier 2?
There'll be 14 gates up there, and that's all being worked on right now. There's a long-term use and lease agreement that we're working on right now that'll define how much service will actually be occurring in tier 2. But the plan is ultimately to expand tier 2 the full length to the west that you're seeing in this picture, and to replace the temporary concourse where United and all the other airlines are operating.
The CD, when do they project the extension of the right side of the J to make it a U?
We don't know yet. It depends on the money.
All right, because right now, if you're going to
Yes,
D, you take a people move. And it's, like.
the people movers are going to be around for quite some time. I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but the J that's into the Aero train will eventually be a big loop all around, and your grandchildren and my grandchildren will be able to enjoy that. It will probably be some time before that big circle is finished.
May the circle be complete.
Right. That's all part of the plan. To your point about the people movers, we're going to have them for some time. And in fact, we're rehabilitating many of them right now. They serve a very important purpose. There's a number of flights that hard stand out of Dulles. And the only way to get folks from the hard stand back to the terminal is the people movers. There's also emergency situations where we have to evacuate a plane because of weather, because a plane has come in because of a weather delay and they don't have a gate. So they land in Dulles, we get everybody over to where they need to be in the main terminal using the people movers. And many people aren't aware of this, but since the last time I came to visit you, we had a little bit of a crisis across the water a little bit. And when the federal government was evacuating Afghan refugees to this region, Philadelphia, Dulles were some of the ports of entry. Dulles stood up an operation that within the course of a month, 52,000 Afghan refugees were brought in through Dulles International Airport without any other interruption of the full-time airport operations that were going on for our general customers. And those individuals who arrived worked very, very closely with our federal, state, and local public health and security and partners all around to make sure that everybody got into this country and got where they needed to go throughout the country. But their port of entry was Dulles, so 52,000 people.
Right.
So those people movers have a great deal of value.
But somebody who lands out of I ate it with.
You know, it's a wonderful thing that, you either love them or you hate them. And we've got about 50% on both sides.
Right.
So,
I forgot to introduce you to somebody that I like.
Quick question about what you just describing about the processing of the 55,000 plus or minus refugees. How well was that activity publicized?
we did not publicize it much at all.
Why not?
You know, it was really important that folks were able to safely evacuate from where they were and they got to where they needed to be without a lot of fanfare. There was very significant concerns for some of the people who were arriving here and for the families and colleagues that they left behind to make sure that everybody got here safely. And so our job was just to accept the process that we were asked to participate in and to be a good partner, and that's what we did.
Yes, they were housed at the expo.
There was a number of places all around that they were housed both temporarily and then in long term. So next, any other questions? Next slide, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Dominion, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
So this is the Dominion Energy Solar Project, and the yellow is the outline of the where on the east-west runway the solar panels will be. On the right side is Chair McKay and other leaders from the area, including Chair Randall and our U.S. senators and congressional delegation doing the groundbreaking for the solar energy. This is the largest renewable energy project ever at a U.S. airport up to now.
So we're actually taking all that tree cover down?
So all of that tree cover, much of that tree cover is slated to come down at any rate. That is the area where there will be taxiways and in our fifth runway. That was never designed permanently to be tree cover forever and ever. Next slide, please. So Silver Line at Dulles, over 1 million riders since it was opening in November 2022. We celebrated that earlier this fall. Want to thank Fairfax County and all of our partners in the rail project for helping to bring the Silver Line to fruition. Local, federal, state, and private property owners, et cetera. All of us are participating in making a great project, very, very successful. There are dozens of miles of right-of-way that the airport authority has donated to with the WMATA system to make that project successful. Next slide. So some new amenities at Dulles. A lot of emphasis on green concessions. The Capital One Lounge, I'll show you a picture of in a moment, has recently opened. Our valet parking has returned, and I mentioned earlier that we're doing the mobile lounge rehabilitation. We have to rehabilitate those mobile lounges to kind of keep them going. Nobody makes parts for them anymore. And so we do ourselves. And in fact, sometimes we even, well, I will tell you that we recently, when we did the apprenticeships tour of Dulles, a lot of the apprentices took great pride in their work in keeping the mobile lounges going, and we really appreciate their efforts. Next slide, please. There's a picture of the Capital One Lounge. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and we're going to keep improving lounges throughout both of our airports as time moves on. Next slide. Let's talk about rate a little bit. I know we're out here at Dulles and everybody focuses on Dulles, but we are a dual airport system, and frankly, a healthy Reagan National means a healthy Dulles. So we've done a runway rehabilitation project. I'll show you a picture of it in a moment. We've got some new modular parking decks that are coming in to help facilitate some roadway improvements that we're planning for some improving of traffic flow on the internal roadways at Reagan National. And we are reimagining the National Hall experience to enhance the passenger satisfaction of that. You know, a lot of folks are aware that after 9/11, the terminal at Reagan National Hall was changed in terms of its function and use because all of a sudden we had TSA at the end of each pier. Well, we opened the new Project Journey at the north end, which had also put TSA on the north and south end where the metro stations are. So you now come into TSA before you go into National Hall itself. And now for the first time since 9/11, National Hall is functioning as it was originally designed architecturally to function. You can go from one pier to the next without having to go through security again. And we are reimagining a lot of concessions in that area now to keep improving the passenger
So
experience.
basically, National Hall is bifurcated as a secure area and an insecure, a non-secure area. So people can go either way, but they're separated between the two.
You will not get to National Hall unless you have a ticket. Right. Next slide. So there's some of the experiences, some of the pictures of what we're doing interiorly in National Hall. Next slide. The runway. This is the busiest runway in the United States. Runway 119 is needing some rehabilitation. So every night we've been closing it down to all airport operations. And we repave a strip, usually about 18 inches wide, and for as long as we can go. We have an asphalt manufacturing facility right there on airport that we built to facilitate this. And by 5:30 in the morning, we reopened the runways and back to air service. And we've been doing that in good weather all throughout the year. And we will continue in 2024. Runways 119 and 1533 are all needing some pavement rehabilitation. We look to complete that in the latter part of next year. The modular parking decks, folks are saying, well, geez, so if you got a metro, why do you want to build more parking? And the fact of the matter is, we are needing some additional parking, particularly in the south end of the DCA, regardless for employees and for also our passengers, and also to facilitate some of the roadway improvements that we need to make happen in other parts of the airport. So those are modular parking decks that can be assembled and then disassembled and removed to other parts of the airport as needed. It's a pretty fascinating effort we're undertaking in DCA. So that operational readiness is expected sometime in not next year, but the following year, 2025. And those are some pictures of some of the roadway improvements. These are the things we're doing on airport. We're doing what we need to do at DCA on airport to improve our roadways, but quite frankly, we're going to need a lot of assistance, particularly now if the Wizards come to Northern Virginia, to improve access for Route 1 and from the GW Parkway, and mostly to improve access where the GW Parkway and Route 1 connect with I-395. There are days when traffic backs up from the 14th Street Bridge all the way back to GW Parkway, all the way back to our airport, all the way back to Crystal City. So as a region, we need to do something about that. And our federal partners at the GW Parkway and the state at VDOT, our local partners in DC and Alexandria and Arlington are all aware that improvements need to happen in this area of Route 1 and in the southern area of Route 1. And hopefully some of those improvements can occur as time moves on the next decade. This is we are monitoring I mentioned a couple of times the recent announcement from the governor and a U.S. senator and City of Alexandria partners and members of the General Assembly. We're monitoring as the details emerge, the recent monumental properties proposal. You can see on the right-hand side, that's our airport in relation to where this arena and the stadium and the pavilion will be, the music pavilion will be, or events pavilion. And then to the left of that will be some, JBG has in all what's in the blue where the target is. JBG will relocate the target at some place in that area, and ultimately they'll have some hotels and some residential in those areas as well. So the red area is where Mr. Leonsis wants to build a stadium and his pavilion, and just north of that is where Virginia Tech has already landed as part of the HQ2. You can see Route 1 at the bottom of the screen there, and Potomac Avenue are in between the Leonsis parcel and JBG. So lots of excitement about that, and we're monitoring very closely. Our need is to make sure that what is built there isn't so high that it penetrates the surfaces that we have to protect, the unseen surfaces that we have to protect in the airspace for our runway arrivals and departures. So we're working very closely with our federal, state, local partners to communicate what our needs are, and hopefully everybody will get to Kumbaya.
Here's a question for you. The Potomac Yard Station is new, it just opened this year, if I'm not mistaken. And it was paid for by the City of Alexandria itself, the state of Virginia paid for it. Did all the WMATA groups pay for it? Was that just a locally paid for station? Do you know if that was the case?
You know, for years, while we were building the Silver Line, a lot of people referred to questions about WMATA to me, and I always used to have to say, well, we're MWA, not WMATA. And in this, Jeff, I need to defer to WMATA.
I'm just wondering.
I am familiar enough to be dangerous on how that was financed, but you'll have to ask. You'll have to bring Greg Lutz and the WMATA team over here, and he can have a long conversation with you.
The only thing that I would say is that if the state of Maryland helped finance that, they're surely going to, and the District of Columbia helped finance that station, they're surely going to regret spending money to have the teams moved on their penny.
And that's always been a challenge, how they fund their capital improvements. It's usually a mix of some federal money and then like the locality that got the federal share. Typically, that's done on the basis of everybody contributes something, but if you're in the benefited jurisdiction, you contribute a little bit more. Point one. Point two is it's interesting, this new proposal, because that station, new station Potomac Yards, was one of 10 or 12 that the WMATA general manager had identified to shut down because of their funding issues.
So again, I'm not a WMATA.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next slide. So with the progress that we have, we also have some significant challenges. I mentioned a little bit about residential development around DCA, and when it gets too high, it gets to be a concern, or commercial development when it gets to be too high, when they award bonus height density to developers beyond what is in the locality's original zoning plan. That bonus height density sometimes pushes up on some airspace that needs to be protected. Other types of threats to DCA include a threat about that is percolating through the FAA reauthorization right now to the DCA slot and perimeter rule. DC and New York are the last two slot-controlled airports in the country, or two of the major slot-controlled airports in the country. And there's a move afoot in Congress to try to cram more flights into DCA. I already mentioned that single runway is the busiest runway in America. It's oftentimes seeing departures about 55 or 60 or departures or more in an hour. And you start to try to cram more flights into that hour, and it gets to be a real mess. On top of that, the landside capacity for increasing passengers at DCA is constrained. The growth needs to occur at Dulles, and that's our message to our friends in the Congress. Some of the other significant challenges that you're familiar with, residential development around Dulles, aircraft noise issues, congested roadways I talked about. I'll talk briefly about some long wait times for international visas. Sometimes it's up to 2 years. People are waiting to get a visa to travel, to come into the United States. That's a problem. There's a problem at the federal level for processing passports. Those delays are a problem. And there's a challenge in our airports for customs staffing. Frankly, we have a great port director here at Dulles, and we've had a series of great port directors at Dulles, very, very cooperative. But then a lot of times, for various reasons, folks have been taken from the ports in the DC area and moved to other places around the country where they needed some custom staffing. So it's always a challenge. Next slide, please. So I touched on the threats to the DCA perimeter. Basically, all of those, the blue line across the center of the country represents the perimeter. It's been expanded a few times since Reagan National Airport was created. At this point, we want to kind of hold where it is right now, with the few exemptions beyond the perimeter that already exist. What is being proposed in the Congress is to have additional outside perimeter flights going into DCA. And frankly, if that occurs, that could be a real challenge. And it could be a real challenge sometimes too for airlines who have to make a choice about, well, if I'm going to serve a long-term flight into DCA, do I have to, or should I reduce air service for some of the communities that's within the perimeter? So all of that is being hashed out in the Congress right now. We're watching it very closely, and I know there's been some heightened interest in that for quite some time. Mentioned that DCA is the you can go to the next slide. The busiest runway in America, and I mentioned how busy it is, sometimes busier than you would expect. Next slide. Here at Dulles and throughout the airspace in the region, airport encroachment, tall buildings and new houses around airports are a challenge. I mentioned about building heights near DCA or sometimes near other flight paths. You here in this community are very familiar with residential development and noise sensitive areas near the flight paths. There's been longstanding protection by local governments to create airport compatible zoning. And recently there's been some relaxation of some of those protections. So we're watching that very carefully and hoping that our local partners can maintain some of the balance that has been maintained successfully so far and has generated the economic success that our airports have been able to provide to the region. There is no question that when you put new residential in flight paths, residents are going to complain about noise, and they do. Next slide. So some of you are very familiar about some of the land use protections that local governments have instituted. The green line going across this slide from kind of catty corner north, southeast and southwest and northeast. That's right, Jeff, right there. That's the demarcation between Fairfax County and Loudoun County on our airport property. So basically everything north of that in the dark green line is an area around the airport that Loudoun County has agreed is in the 65 DNL noise zone. They do not build new residential area in that location. Beyond that, there is in the 60, they could, not always, but could build new residential in that area, provided that folks are given notice that there's a 24/7 international airport operating nearby, that the developers provide interior noise insulation in the development to keep things quiet interiorly, and that there's three conditions that Loudoun County imposes. So a navigation easement, a noise attenuation, and notice to homeowners. And then in Loudoun County, that kind of bluish gray 1 mile buffer beyond that is an area, Jeff, you're in Fairfax County. In Loudoun, there you go. In Loudoun County, that 1 mile buffer is something that Loudoun County very creatively and smartly created. That buffer allows for residential, but anyone who is moving into that buffer will at least get notice that there's an airport nearby. On the other side of the line is Fairfax County's land use protections. Their yellow line is the 65 DNL that Fairfax has agreed not to put new residential in. Although, as you know, and certainly in this community, the AGAPE residential is being proposed to be right up on that line, on the center line of runway run right. And then in the area of the blue is the area where most recently the Fairfax Board of Supervisors had aligned their three conditions with similar to what Loudoun does, navigation easement, noise attenuation, and notice to homeowners. There is no 1 mile buffer beyond that in Fairfax County. And next slide, please. And somewhere previous to that, I showed a slide of where everyone flies. Can you go back to that for just a second? There you go. So those are the buffers that I just showed a moment ago of how local government tries to create airport compatible land use. But where the planes fly is where noise occurs. And the further you get away from the airport, the higher the planes are flying. So it's not like we're hearing all over from those communities, but those green dots that are on the map are green dots of communities that we're hearing from with we have a great deal of concern for, because localities have approved new residential in those areas, and there's probably more to come, sad to say.
So you're getting more noise complaints from those areas with green dots? Is that?
You know, my colleague, Mike Jeck, is on the line. Mike, the question is, are we getting more noise complaints from areas where flight paths are occurring in close proximity to the residential communities? Can you answer that question, please? Mike Jeck? Is he?
He's on. I mean, he's there. I requested that he unmute and turn his video on, and yeah. Oh, I like this. Here he is. Welcome.
I thought I missed that.
Mike Jeck, the question.
Cynthia, I know if with the newer homes that have gone into the areas of the flight path, if we've gotten an increase in.
Cynthia, I'm very sorry. Can you get closer to the microphone, please?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
That is getting a lot better. A little closer.
Okay, so I was trying to find out if, given the newer homes that have gone into the higher BNL flight path areas, if you've seen a rise in noise complaints in the
Yes.
past two. Yes, okay.
Massive.
Massive, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. And I think we just lost our,
Just momentarily, I think. Oh, if I could follow up on that question, just briefly. You've gotten a massive increase in the number of noise complaints.
From new residential construction close to the airport.
Okay, that's important too. Has that information been reported to the appropriate local government officials in Fairfax and Loudoun County?
It's well known in Loudoun County, but it hasn't quite happened all the way yet in Fairfax the way it has in Loudoun. So the way it broke down in Loudoun is after the airport submitted documentation with graphics opposing proposed residential development, which was approved, built, sold, and moved into, the residents began complaining about the inability to sleep and numerous other issues associated with constant, frequent, low altitude, high volume aircraft overflights and associated noise. That really got Loudoun's attention. But to date, that scenario has not happened in Fairfax yet.
because the new residential that's been approved or is in the process of being approved hasn't yet been moved in yet. Is that correct, Michael?
Correct.
Okay. So it's something we're kind of watching very carefully, and it's likely to be on the horizon if continued new residential close to the airport is continually approved.
Since you're talking about increased traffic, it sounds like a dramatic increase in the amount of flights.
No, not at Dulles. Dulles is still pre-COVID. We have not 100% recovered from COVID as far as annual operations go. We're very, very close at Dulles. But I'm sorry.
But there is an expectation of significant growth at Dulles.
Yes.
And since that is the expectation, might we expect, might we expect improvements in the planes to make them quieter?
That's a very interesting question, and I hear a lot of times, in fact, some policymakers state, well, in time, planes are going to get quieter anyway. They're quieter now than they would be. The fact of the matter is, let's keep this.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. The quieter airplanes get, the more complaints go up, because it's not just noise, it's frequency. So if you went from, let's say, 5 overflights a day, that if you added up all that noise from those 5 overflights, let's suppose it came up to 100. And then you went from 5 a day that equal 100 to 20 a day that equal 90. All right, we can go on and on and on about how quieter airplanes are today, and they are. They're half as loud as they were 25 years ago. But the increase in the number of operations is a new level of annoyance point. It's not just what you're hearing. It's that you're hearing it over and over and over and over again. So even if we cut the volume by 50%, the exposure to the overflight goes up, even if the exposure to the noise goes down.
But,
And go on, I'm sorry.
yeah, but still, I mean, you make it, I understand that the number of flights is going to increase anyway. So it would be to reduce the volume, the noise volume would have a positive impact.
So that's a very common perception, but here's how this plays out in reality. It does appear to be a positive, but in reality, it is a reduction of a negative. And there's a big difference between a reduction of a negative and the introduction of a positive. And the analogy I like to use is if in, let's say, 2021, your employer said, hey, things are rough and tough, we got to give you a 10% pay cut because COVID's killing everything. And then halfway through 2021, your employer says, okay, you know what? We're going to change your 10% pay cut to a 5% pay cut. You're not getting a 5% raise. Your pay cut has been reduced.
Let me just, if I can, for a second, because we could spend a lot of time on noise. May I just interject this? If they developed a plane that makes no noise, an electric plane today, it would be at least a generation before that plane would be in wide circulation across the United States. So even if every bit of noise went away, we're still dealing with at least another generation or a generation and a half of people being irritated by airplane noise that is occurring. And the other thing that I'll put into perspective is that with the current infrastructure in place, Dulles has the capacity to double the employments that we currently have. So it comes down to a question of growth and of balance. And it's an ongoing dialogue between us and our local communities. And it's something that's a work in progress.
Well,
and there's the federal partners have a role in it, local partners have a role in it, airlines have a role in it. And at the end of the day, the best thing that local government can do to prevent conflict is not to introduce it in the first place. Therefore, we share with the local governments where we expect over the course of time, on the map, where we expect high noise impacts will occur. We've shared that with Fairfax, we've shared that with Loudoun, and we are working with our localities so that they are aware of the high noise impact areas, and hopefully the counties who control land use and zoning exclusively can make the decisions they need to make about what's in the best interest for their locality.
The reason I asked is I've been living in the flight path for 30 years. I was just curious. It's you're talking about dramatically increasing the traffic. I just wonder if I should go.
I'm sorry, Jeff, if that's you speaking, can you get closer to the microphone? It's just hard for me to hear only because you guys are a little bit further away.
Mike, it was an editorial comment, and we'll continue the presentation now. Go ahead, Jeff. Next slide. So I'm going to close on, I mentioned some international travel continues to create some challenges for passport. I mentioned for our passengers, I mentioned the visa wait times, I mentioned the passport processing delays, and I mentioned the long CPP wait times. I want to thank our federal partners. I want to thank our federal members of Congress and our U.S. senators for their help in addressing those matters. Jeff, are we off?
This happened last time and the technical difficulty.
It turns off after an hour, and you have to be quick enough to reboot it. And why that happens, it is, never mind.
Well, the good news is we're at the end of our presentation, so I hope if you want to go to the next slide, I think it's the thank you slide. Yeah, just want to thank you for your ongoing support and assistance. You can back up. That's a erroneous slide. Just want to thank you, Sully District as Council of Citizens Associations for your longstanding support, and thank you for the invitation this evening.
Okay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. As you can hear, we've had lots of people with questions. I'm going to ask the people here and then the people in the audience. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and then we can play musical chairs or Hollywood Squares. Does anybody wish to ask Mike a question? You have your full opportunity now to do so. Jay, the gyms, anybody else here?
People online?
Well, I'm talking to the people on the Hollywood Squares. Anybody? Jay, you have your hand up?
That never happens.
Okay. Jay is lowered there. Okay, you have your hand up. Go ahead then.
Up, I think you're muted.
No, yeah, you are. Unmute.
Hi there. I live in Eastern Sully, and we moved here in 2000, and we never heard a plane until probably this year, and enough so that the all of two times I've heard it is.
Oh, you're muted
Oh,
again.
you went mute again.
Sorry. So it actually shook our house, which is a concrete block house. I was surprised. It even shook our patio. And I understand the challenges of the growing airport. And I'm wondering why it is that there would be noise in area that is outside of any known contour.
Excellent question. Okay, and this is a question that we're dealing with from Loudoun County supervisors as well as Loudoun County residents. So the noise contour depicts an average of where certain levels of noise occur. So any noise beyond what is depicted in the contour looks like there's no airplanes there. There's noise there, but the noise level's not loud enough to be inside a particular contour. Think about like when you're applying to buy a house, right? And they ask for your age bracket. Well, there's plenty of people in those age brackets that you're not checking. It's the same thing with noise. There is noise below what is shown in the contour, but the contour is only showing the noise that's loud as or louder than a minimum set level.
And isn't that an average noise level? So in essence,
Yes.
if it happens
And
6 months, the average is
what they do is they take a whole year's worth of activity. And over the course of a year, different runways are going to be used, different flight procedures are going to be used, different direction of flows are going to be used. And they take an entire year and they condense it into what we call the average annual day. And then we run that average annual day and we say, this is what we would like to base our decision making on. This is the average noise exposure. Now, this has been controversial since its inception. And the reason is humans, we mathematically can compute the average, but we don't experience noise as an average. We experience it as an event.
Right.
So nobody wakes up on Saturday morning and says, wow, last Friday, my average noise exposure was louder than it was yesterday. Oh, I don't, right? And I've been doing this for 30 years. It's mathematically accurate way to do things, but there's no correlation to the human experience, which is why the FAA is undertaking a noise policy review at the moment. But I won't go down into that. That's a different conversation.
Thank you so much.
Jay, you have your hand up again? But you're muted.
It's a mic problem.
You're not muted now, but we can hear you. Hi, we heard you.
Oh, wait, there he goes. I can hear
You
him.
can hear me now? Okay. I'm not sure what's going on. But anyways, this question goes back to Mike on noise. We think that the contours were from 2019. Is that correct? Rather than the early ones in 93 or 95 that Fairfax County and Sully District continue to use?
So in 1993, what we did is present to the counties what we believed the noise exposure. I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper, are you speaking with me?
I should just say briefly, Fairfax County uses the contours that were adopted in 1993.
Yes.
Loudon uses the contours that were updated in 2019. That's,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's the state of where we are right now.
But so what we did starting in around 91, 92, there was a lot of development pressure on Loudoun County to allow development in areas where Loudoun County has historically prevented residential development. So we did a noise contour and we said, we want to look at the full build out, max capacity, all 5 runways in the dirt, and the operation is humming at capacity. We submitted that study result in 92, 93 to Loudoun and Fairfax. Loudoun adopted. Basically, Fairfax County adopted the same thing, the 65 and the 60, and said, okay, no residential inside the 60, and some minor differences about what happens between 60 and 65. Well, in probably 2017, 2018, the FAA approached us and said, we are going to be making some changes to the airspace that are going to result in changes in runway use that are going to increase capacity at Dulles Airport. And we did not want to update these contours because we knew it was going to cause a nightmare. It was going to be a big problem, but we could not, at the end of the day, decide that we were going to stick with information we knew was inaccurate. We had no choice. We had more accurate information, and we as an organization decided, okay, we're going to take the new information, we're going to update these 30-year-old contours. And that's what we did in 2019. We did everything exactly the same as we did in 1993. The only difference is we used the 2019 data. But the process, the philosophy was identical to what we did in 91, 92 that resulted in the 93 contours. The philosophy was unchanged. The only thing that changed was the data. And that's why the contour from the YUMWA 2019 is different than the 1993.
Well, I certainly applaud you for your effort to do that because I think that's the right thing to do. The data is the data, and you crank the new data into existing variables and you continue those same variables along. what I think has happened in Fairfax County, they chose to ignore those contours. They chose to find an out. Oh, this is not going to happen for 50 more years, so we don't have to worry about it because
Yeah.
we don't think. I mean, they had 100 different excuses to why they didn't want to adopt them. So that's not my major concern, because I think in that discussion, you all increased the number of military aircraft coming in.
So there's
Prospectively.
the prediction for the future does show a little bit more military. There's very little military at Dulles, primarily
Okay.
because Andrews Air Force Base is so close by. Airports, civilian airports that are hundreds and hundreds of miles away from military facilities do have military operations, but if you're military and you're coming to this region, you're going to Andrews.
Okay. Well, what about the new the new Airbus A5 or 350? I believe United has plans now in the works to buy numerous Airbuses and replace the existing Boeing aircraft, the 777s. So that is more noise. And again, more noise does
Well,
not
they would be
necessarily mean
buying
a
the
problem.
civilian variant. They would be buying the civilian variant. So it's important to understand that the military kind of gets they kind of get a pass from noise
Yeah, that's
regulations.
kind of my
But
point.
if an aircraft is going to be used by a Part 121 carrier in the United States, and Part 121 is your common carrier, every airline and every common carrier that's operating an airline has to comply with Federal Aviation Regulation Part 121. That subjects you to Federal Aviation Regulation Part 36, which is the noise standards associated with the manufacturing of aircraft. So to your point, and you're 100% right, the only difference between the military version and the civilian version is the engines. And the engines that are going on the civilian version of the A350 do comply with all federal aviation regulations.
Okay. But I think, as you have just mentioned, we're now subject to not necessarily the noise coming from a single engine, but the noise coming from multiple single engines. In an hour, we're going from 10 flights to 15 to 20 flights per hour. And it's
Yeah,
that
and it
continuous
turns
noise that we're subject to.
the
So
20
here's,
operations that produce less noise than 5 operations is proving through data to be more annoying to human beings than
oh, I
the
get it.
5 louder aircraft.
I agree. I mean, right after COVID, we had lunch at Mellow Mushroom, which is right under the path, right there by the new Wegmans. And it was right as Afghanistan was bringing the flights in, and there seemed to be a flight coming in every 5 minutes. A flight was coming over, and that was unforeseen, I think. And I live just a little bit further down that flight path in Virginia Run, and you could definitely tell the difference overhead because you couldn't talk when those airplanes were going over. I have a
The
second
only,
question.
I'm
Go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, finish
I
off,
was going to say,
Mike.
Virginia Run is under the approach path
Yeah,
for one runway 19 left. That's our runway that came online in November of 2008, I believe it was.
yeah.
That runway, the airlines don't like it because it's a long taxi from that runway to the terminal. And it takes a long time to get from that runway back to the terminal environment. So that runway as a whole is probably utilized for 5%, maybe 8% of total annual operations at Dulles Airport.
Hmm.
So when that runway is being used, it's either because the other runways are down for maintenance or they're busy. They're doing more than 60 per hour.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
this
Dulles
question.
can do about 85 operations per hour.
Okay. This question is for the other Mike. Mike, we've got a problem, as you know, with the new development of a data center right there, very close to your property. And the concern is that it's going to poke into your airspace. Now, I know that you've been very loud in your concerns to the developers across both the airport at Dallas and the airport down in DC about these buildings poking into your airspace. Can you be more forceful? Is there a way for you to be more forceful about this one? They are not telling us how high that building is going to be into your airspace because they don't know how much fill and how much land development they need to do before they begin construction. Is this
Yeah,
a serious issue for you?
I want to thank you for the question. I can only tell you that there's a ongoing dialogue between our planners and the county planners on when it comes to building heights around either of our airports. And if there is a consideration that would penetrate airspace that we need to be concerned about, we do communicate that clearly to the county planning staff. And so I can only tell you that as the processes move forward and things get refined, we are always reassessing or assessing whether or not there's any, we are assessing and reassessing the airport compatibility of what's being put forward. And we speak to fact. We don't speak to hyperbole. So if we're realizing that there's a sincere penetration of a piece of airspace that needs to be protected, we will communicate that clearly. We don't make stuff up. So, but with that, I want to thank again the Sully District community. You've been a very, very good partner in all of the discussions that we've had over the years. I want to thank all of our local government professional staff and the folks who develop policy and procedures from the Fairfax Board of Supervisors. At the end of the day, it's all about a question of balance. How do we protect the growing economic engine of the region, which includes our airports, and how do we create a space where families can live and grow and prosper and a good place to do a business. And that's what we're all about. That's why we're into the economic discussions with our local officials that we are. And we really appreciate, again, the opportunity to be with you and your support tonight.
Can I go one step further in that last discussion that Jay brought up? We really appreciate you doing your outreach from the airport authority to the Fairfax County government staff. At the same time, are you doing that kind of outreach to the Federal Aviation Administration, particularly with regard to these data center issues, how high they are, whether they do begin to interfere with your operational airspace? And is the FAA being encouraged by you, since these are two federally owned airports, to reach out to the local elected officials and say, oh, there's a problem here, or there may be a problem. We need hard, exact dimensions of these structures. Thank you very much. Let's go have lunch.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience at having lunch with the FAA folks. I can tell you that if there is a penetration of airspace that needs to be protected, we would have and do communicate that directly. At the end of the day, local government governs zoning and local government governs land use. And we respect our role as an airport operator. FAA controls the airspace, and they will always act in a manner that keeps the airspace safe.
But are they notified by you that there is a concern, or is it not?
As I said, if there is a penetration of an airspace that we need to be concerned about, we will communicate that clearly to all parties up and down the chain.
Okay, well, with that, we've heard Mike's constrained answer. He said as much as he's capable legally to say. We're going to wish you and the airport a happy holiday season. I'm going to pick up my son 4 o'clock Saturday, and I wish that it will be unimpeded and trustworthy that it is, but I hope it will be. So with all that, all those people who are traveling, make Douglas your focal point, and let's continue hoping for good news.
Wait,
And we'll tell you.
one more question for Mike Jack, actually. With the data centers, for example, the noise that the air HVACs on the top, they create a tremendous amount of noise. Is that something that the airports are concerned about, if those heights of those buildings get so tall that they are close to critical airspace?
So the airport, as a general rule, is very aware, and I hate to use the word concerned, but we are definitely knowledgeable of development that's going to interfere with what we call Part 77 imaginary surfaces. However, building developers as well as counties, they know that they have to go through the FAA. I think it's the 7460, I forget the terminology, but there is a process for all new buildings to be examined by FAA so they can determine whether or not there is or is not a hazard to air navigation. Now, even though that's a federal function, we as an airport do it ourselves anyway. We take it very seriously. We look at it and we share our results with our federal partners, even though we know they're doing it themselves anyway. We basically say, we know you've got your data, here's ours, we'll talk later. But as far as the noise from air conditioning or ventilation on top of a data center, it's not that we're not concerned about it, it just kind of falls outside of our wheelhouse.
Okay. Jay, you have your hands up again?
Yeah, let me piggyback on Cindy's comment. I'm not concerned so much about the noise, but I'm more concerned about the air turbulence that's being created in the area, especially when you have large apparatuses like air conditioning and other air cooling apparatus, which is changing the air temperature and the air volume and the air composition, right? Does that come into consideration when you start flying on or around or near these data centers, when they're poking into your airspace or within feet of your airspace?
Wow. Honestly, that goes far beyond my mathematical, aeronautical knowledge, experience, and capabilities. Truth be told, sir, I've never even pondered that.
Could someone in your, I know maybe not you, maybe Mike Cooper can raise this question or understanding if there is a question, maybe there isn't. It was thrown out to me. And I pondered about it as I was flying this past week. When you hit these air pockets, it's because the air is more or less dense, and the air just all of a sudden loses supportability. And then so if flying across or over top of those facilities, does that change your concern?
I will defer my answer until I can find, I don't even know who to ask about that, to be honest with you.
There was a pilot.
I think you're raising an issue that is beyond our capacity to answer, and we are not pilots. We are not aviation experts in that, in the manner that you're seeking an answer here. I just can't answer your question. I think it's theoretical, and I hear you, but I don't know that there's a path for us to go down this route. I can tell you that if that is a concern, the folks who are responsible for safety in the air have not raised that issue with us.
Okay.
Okay, and with that, I'm gonna let Mike and his staff go today. Again,
Thank you, gentlemen, for your help. Appreciate it very much.
everybody, thank you so much for coming. Everybody have a good holiday. Now, we got a couple of items, other items that we're gonna talk about. And so I'm going to share my screen for a minute, if I may. I'm gonna share a file. And share package with file. Now, from a screener application, I want to screen that. Okay, so I'm gonna close this up. I know, wrong things. Here. So going back to the agenda. Primary, that's not primary. Here we go. I want to point out a few things before we go into our next discussion about data centers, just that you're aware of some things that are happening.
Don't let Mike wait for that jacket.
And don't leave your jacket behind, Mike. Okay, you don't, as soon as he walked out the door, he would realize that he did not have his jacket. Okay, so I wanted to show you this video that Mike had shown earlier and had given to me, just so that you can see what he's talking about. Now we should hear this, maybe. Okay, here we go. Wait a second. I want this to play the sound, so let's see if I can get the sound going, and let's try this again. I don't know if you can hear that sound.
Do we hear it?
Do we hear it? You do. All right, so you hear it. This is, as we mentioned, and you'll see here that I'm going back to the agenda, that we had approved this back in May of this year. And the Evelyn Spain, our planning commission, asked us, had we taken any action on this? And I said our determination, and our determination on that matter back in that period of time is that we said here we go, that AGAPE House Chantilly, that we supported this SSPA. And Mike just wanted to show that the residents of that facility will be hearing that sound that we didn't hear, but you did. And I encourage the people here to check this link and let's listen to it. Now, the other business is that the county is going through the outdoor dining zoning ordinance amendment. I've invited them to speak to us. Whether or not they will, because our next meeting is on Martin Luther King birthday. Sometimes they don't like to come on federal holidays. There's the Help to Shape the Future Land Use in Centerville. There's a link to a webpage where you can choose to enter information. It should be open until mid-January 2024. There's some bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects, Stringfellow Road, Braddock Road, Poplar Tree, and Walney, so you can read more about that. There's a mobility and transportation data dashboard. There's a county launches a healthy communities dashboard. There's a public hearing on the Dulles Greenway, who are proposing to increase tolls. You're welcome to speak to that if you wish. They're going to go to, they're hoping, they want to go for increased tolls from 810 to peak hours up from the current 580 and 640 from the 5 1/4. Okay. I want to also point out that the annual Citizen of the Year nomination period is in place. The nominations go to 31 January 2024. And 2 years ago, John Litzenberger was our honoree. We've had many honorees from Sully District. They only are honored if we volunteer and put their names on and submit their names. So if you have somebody in your organization, charitable, community, religious, that volunteers their time and effort, please submit a nomination. If you don't submit the nomination, they can't be considered. Next month, we're hoping to have Speaker Sully, Planning Commissioner Evelyn Spray. It might be because it's a Wednesday, she can't make it. It might be that she'll be coming on a Monday. We have the Transportation Advisory Commission for Sully scheduled for February. If Evelyn can't make it and gives me a negative, I'll find somebody else to do it. And right now, I don't think we have a zoning item scheduled for Monday, the 15th. We do have this invite. We'll see whether or not we have a meeting, whether or not it has to be, whether it will be postponed. I wanted you, excuse me, see that before we go. And 2 days ago, we had the special exception advance presentation about, oh, how did this disappear? I hate when Windows does that to you. And they were talking about outdoor components associated with an indoor kennel. We had no objections, but that was preliminary. They're going to come back to us sometime this spring or late winter. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to some people here who want to speak on the proposed data center for Chantilly. I will remind people that even though the current, the previous chair of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors lost that person's primary to a person who objected to data centers. The Prince William County Board of Supervisors, under the lame duck leadership of this still in place Board of Supervisors, approved the data centers. I know there's concern in general, but I wanted you to be aware that that's where it stands. And now I'm going to stop sharing it and we can go back to our own things. Now remember, if you're going to speak here today, let's pass that microphone closer to you, Louis, if you can bring it down. And Cheryl, if you can get closer to the microphone. And we'll go with that. All right. And I'm going to put us into the Hollywood Square. Okay. So we have Jim, Jay, and Jan. And then you see hear us in there. And I'm going to move down there too, so that I'll be invisible as well. Invisible.
I'm sorry, what are we doing?
We were discussing what we're going to do about planning data center.
I think we know this is a coffee or something.
Yes, you wanted to,
So we did, yeah.
you wanted to have a meeting after the meeting.
I did want to, but not a big recorded meeting. I just wanted to have the meeting with those of us who will be visiting with the supervisors.
So the question then is, do you not want these 4 people to be joining us?
Well, I just wanted to talk about the meetings that we're going to be having with the supervisors, the other supervisors,
Okay.
so.
So my question is, they're there because they can't be here, but they want to be here.
Okay.
I can leave.
No, it's not that, it was something, I wanted to go through a list of things that I had.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that there's no reason why the Sully District Council can't have this discussion.
You know, you guys can have a discussion.
That's why we're having, that's why you're here, that's why we're here.
Well, I don't know what you're expecting from me then.
All right, Steve.
Yeah, I guess
There's a miscommunication, I think.
I guess we were going to have this meeting and interested parties can stay on if they're interested. I guess Jay is interested. Wow. Oh, we should have that discussion.
Okay, well, just really quickly then, I had sent you guys a fax sheet, those of us who are going to be meeting with the other supervisors, and I had wanted to get your feedback on that, and I also wanted to have a few other questions about, the meetings that we have set up, and the meetings that we still haven't yet set up. So again, I'm not sure this is for a public forum.
Well, my point being is, I can cancel the meeting and those people on the street disappear.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to have,
Unless Jay.
and Jay, I mean, we can, and then we can get Jay in, but I don't want a recorded meeting. That's not what this is about.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
this meeting is formally adjourned. I wish everybody a happy holiday, a healthy, prosperous, and enjoyable new year, and be good.
Jay's going to stay.
Well, Jay,
I'm
I'll
gonna have to
I'll
close
get
it.
Jay in, I'll get Jay in. So-
Okay, so I'm going to close the meeting and we will reconvene in the new year at the Sully District Council meeting on the 24th and the Land Use and Transportation Joint Committee meeting on 15 January, if we have a speaker or a topic to consider. With that, I'm not waving my hand, so have a great one.
You too, everyone.
Okay, I'll get to you, Jay.
All right. Thank you.